This really happened to me in Chicago last year, and I'm telling it because people think family won't do this to you. They can. Mine did. Under the white buzz of the city impound lot on West 39th Street, with frost smoking off the chain-link fence and the smell of wet rubber in the air, I wrapped my fingers around a manila envelope and a key fob, the key to a granite gray Dodge Challenger I'd been awarded in restitution. My cousin Derek used my tax ID to stack loans in my name, and tonight he was about to learn I wasn't the quiet bookkeeper he could push around. A Cook County Sheriff's deputy stood beside me, clipboard out, and the tow operator tapped a gloved finger against his lantern, waiting for a signal. On the other side of the gate, a black Escalade idled under a broken light, and I could make out Derek's silhouette, smug, impossible, untouchable, until the deputy snapped the bolt and everything accelerated. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. I grew up on the Northwest Side, near the corner of Milwaukee and Kimball, in an apartment with the kind of radiator you could hear groan like a baritone in January. My mother ran a hair braiding chair on weekends in Humboldt Park. I learned to detangle a mess from hours of practice. I also learned to memorize numbers. I remember the first time Derek winked at me about it, like my brain was a trick. We were teenagers then, huddled at a booth in Lou Malnati's in Logan Square, eating slices heavy with sausage. Derek was the kind of cousin who wore a gold chain to sophomore year and stole the class photo with a grin that said he knew a shortcut to everything. He called himself a hustler before Instagram decided the word meant entrepreneurship. Everyone excused him because he made the old aunts laugh, because he always brought a bottle to a barbecue, because he could sell a sunburn to a vampire. We stayed orbiting in the same neighborhoods as adults. You missed him. I took the blue line every morning toward the Loop to work payroll for a plumbing company that kept half the city's boilers from exploding. Derek ran a car brokerage, which was Chicago speak for buying, flipping, and sometimes holding vehicles, while dealers looked the other way. He staged photo shoots outside the West Loop's graffiti alleys and posted captions like, "Another delivery, another grateful client." He knew the right bartenders at the Violet Hour and the right security guys at a River North night spot where the bouncers didn't smile unless they knew who you were. He liked his drinks brown and his watches louder than an L train. The first crack in my life sounded like a missed call, then a second, then 12. I came out of a payroll audit meeting on a Wednesday and found 3 voicemails from a lender I didn't recognize. The messages were polite at first, then persistently puzzled, then professionally ominous. I deleted them because that's what you do when a universe you trust begins to wobble. Over the next week, envelopes with unfamiliar logos landed in my mailbox like small white boats. A line of red text bled through one of them when I held it to the kitchen light. Past due. I sat at my table with its clean placemats and unpaid debt notices and felt very still. In my head, numbers lined up neatly as they always did, marching like soldiers. My take-home pay, my rent, my savings, my student loan auto payments, none of them made room for a past due. I still remember the stale coffee smell of the financial services kiosk at the Illinois Secretary of State facility on Diversey when the clerk told me someone had checked a title with my information that week. She said it too casually for my heart, then backtracked when she saw my face and called a supervisor. The supervisor, a woman with a calm voice like a perfect radio station, looked up the record. "It's probably nothing," she said, but her eyebrows lifted a millimeter toward the screen as she printed a page. She slid the paper to me. The VIN number might as well have been Cyrillic for all it meant to me then, but the make and model hit like a slap. Dodge Challenger RT Scat Pack, Granite 6.4L V8, dealer Halstead Auto Select. I texted Derek as the L screamed overhead outside the office. "Do you know anything about a Dodge Challenger under my tax ID?" I should have called. I should have marched to his door. Instead, I sent a neat line of words and waited for a bubble to appear. He called immediately. "Cuz, how you been?" He was cheerful in a way that had always felt like the outside layer of something less friendly. I asked my question again, slower. He didn't miss a beat. "Don't worry about it. It's a temporary bridge thing. Dealers mess up paperwork. I'll fix it. Love you. See you Sunday at Auntie's." He hung up before I could say no. Sunday at Aunt Rita's, 2 flat in Avondale, meant a table sagging under aluminum trays, pepper steak, a rose con gandules, salad nobody touched until guilt hour, and cousins spreading out in the living room like a sports bar annex. When Derek arrived, everyone noticed. He moved with weather behind him, shook hands like he was running for alderman, kissed the old ones on both cheeks. His girlfriend, Keisha, wore a soft cream sweater that made her look like a magazine advertisement for good decisions. He poured me a drink without asking in the kitchen. "To family," he said. He clinked my glass and added in a lower register, "Don't make a scene." Humiliation can be subtle, like a bruise under tights. It was in the way my aunt asked if my credit thing was handled, like it was a small adventure, not a suddenly unstable floor. It was in how Derek shrugged about clerical errors, and the room took his shrug as a fact. It was in Keisha blinking an apology she hadn't earned and stroking his shoulder anyway. I stood at the sink, rinsing a bowl, listening to the men talk about interest rates like it was a sport, and thought, he took my name out for a weekend joyride and brought it back on empty. When I left, I hugged my mother, who whispered, "We'll talk later." Her voice told a story of Chicago women keeping their spines straight under everybody's history. I tried to be rational. The next morning, I pulled a credit report and saw inquiries I couldn't name scattered like confetti. On Halstead, on Cicero, online. A small business line of credit had been opened in my name at a storefront bank on North Avenue that still had a green carpeting color I remembered from its previous life as a payday lender. Someone had listed an address that wasn't mine. An apartment on Montrose near the Brown Line, the kind of place with a lock you could bully. I froze my credit across Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and reported identity theft at identitytheft.gov. I filed a police report at the 14th District Station on California Avenue, the officer tapping my details into a system with all the elegance of a 1990s video game. He nodded as I talked, and there was a moment, just a moment, when he asked, "Do you suspect anyone?" And I tasted copper. I said my cousin's name. I said it softly, like maybe the syllables would behave if I didn't scare them. 2 days later, my HR manager called me in. Our annual background checks had rolled around. The company's insurance pulled credit scores for certain positions, a ridiculous policy, but not my call. And mine had cratered 60 points in a week. She tried to sound kind. "You're excellent at your job. I know this is a glitch, but we've got to document an improvement plan." I walked back to my desk like the hallway had lengthened. On the Blue Line home, a man in a Bulls jacket asked if the empty seat next to me was taken, and I almost said yes. I felt like everything was. That night, the first collection agent found my cell. She wasn't cruel. She was efficient. "We have a vehicle purchase contract signed June 3rd with your tax ID, Miss Alvarez," she said. "That's not my signature," I answered, but she wasn't a judge. "Then it's a matter for our fraud department," she said, "but payments are still due pending resolution." Pending resolution was corporate for "we're going to grind you like gravel." I took the next day off and rode the 77 bus to Halstead Auto Select in Bridgeport. The showroom smelled like coffee and vinyl and heat from bodies who whispered about APR. A salesman approached with a smile that had a commission baked in. His name tag said Ray. I asked to speak to whoever handled financing. There was a moment in the little glass office where a manager appeared, glanced at my driver's license, glanced at his computer, glanced back at me, and something in his pupils narrowed. He asked me to wait and disappeared. I waited an hour. When he returned, he had a security guard with him. "We'll send the documents to your email," he said. "We can't hand over copies today." The guard didn't look at me. He looked at what trouble looked like, and he'd decided it was me. I walked out feeling like a thief who had failed to steal anything but shame. When the email finally landed, after a call to the Illinois Attorney General's consumer line lit a fire under somebody, I opened PDFs and stared at my own name. The signature was close enough to fool a sleep-deprived clerk, but not my own eyes. The address line listed that Montrose apartment. The phone number matched my old prepaid from 6 years ago. The income estimates were inflated. The co-signer field was blank. The salesman's name on the bottom of the page, Raymond Ortega, matched the tag. The bank behind the lien was a national lender with commercials that painted money as a friend who shows up right on time. I printed everything. I spread it across my kitchen table like a crime scene. If paperwork is a battlefield, I've lived my whole life training for it. My job is decimals and compliance. My hobby is reading fine print no one else reads. For the first time in a week, my hands stopped shaking. I opened a new legal pad and wrote 3 names: Derek, Ray, the lender. I drew arrows between them, and I wrote one more word in block letters that looked like steel. Enough. Across town in the West Loop that night, Derek posted a story from behind the wheel of a gray Challenger, engine purring low, skyline glittering like applause. "New week, new delivery," he wrote, with a winking triple bag emoji. He tagged Halstead Auto Select. He thought he lived inside a magic trick. He thought he could drag my name behind that car like an exhaust trail, and I would jog along until I ran out of breath. I had just decided to stop running when my phone lit up with an unknown number. The voice on the line introduced herself as Detective Erica Carr from CPD's Financial Crimes Unit. "We received your report and the documents you submitted," she said. "I'm going to be blunt. Family cases are messy, but this one looks clean." My throat went tight with something that felt like gratitude and fury mated. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything," she said, "and the patience to do this the right way." That was the night I put an AirTag under the wheel, well of a car I didn't own, and told myself it was only so I could sleep. I learned that the villain isn't the moment someone steals from you. The villain is how everyone acts like the stealing is just one of those things, and you should be a good sport and accept it. Derek was the mayor of that attitude, and for a decade, we'd all voted him in. I was about to run a campaign for revolution, and then, just when I felt brave again, Derek walked into the impound lot with my aunt on his arm. When Derek smirked through the gate at 39th Street, it felt like the city had arranged lighting for him. He's 6'1" and dresses like a billboard, hoodie under a leather jacket, expensive sneakers that whisper against concrete. Keisha trailed him, phone up to record, her nails a chrome red you could see from a block away. My aunt, the one who taught me how to braid, who has prayed me through 3 bad boyfriends and 1 worse job, came fast, cheeks high with worry. She reached for my hand first. "Mija," she breathed. Then she turned on the deputy. "This is a family matter." "Ma'am," the deputy said in the voice of someone who's heard that sentence except for the last word too many times. "We have a court order?" Derek leaned on the Escalade like he paid property tax on the asphalt. "Alvarez," he said, like my last name was the opening line of a joke. "You brought the county out for me. That's cute." He gestured to the tow operator. "You mind if I grab my personal items from the trunk?" The deputy shook his head. "No one touches the vehicle until I complete inventory." Derek sighed, big, theatrical, then ran his hand along the fence links. "You made this ugly, cuz," he said to me. "You should have called." "I did call," I said. "You hung up." "That's because you sounded hysterical," he replied, and my aunt flinched. He has always known where to plant the knife. "Look, just—" He glanced at Keisha's camera. "Look at you bringing cops. We're family. Keisha swanned closer, phone up, words low like a stage whisper that still carries, "Hey, to whoever watches this later, this girl is lying on my man. She's trying to steal his property. Look at her smile. That's a thief's smile." The phone light made a little halo on my chest. I had never wanted anything less than to be in someone's story. Detective Carr had coached me on this part. Say nothing. Let the paper speak. Let the restitution order and the fraud affidavits and the bank's notarized letter that carved the challenger away from Derek like a surgeon's decision speak. Still, silence is something you have to practice. I broke it once. "You used my tax ID," I said. Simple. Factual. You could have stacked it on a spreadsheet and balanced it. Derek widened his hands like a magician revealing empty palms. "That's crazy," he said. "You're sick. You need—" He glanced at my aunt again. "She needs help, Titi." He made a show of stepping back. "I'm not even mad," he added. "I'm disappointed." The tow operator rolled up the gate, and the deputy signaled him through. The challenger crouched back there like a cat about to jump. The decal on the rear window read, "Hustle Better." And I almost laughed because God is occasionally a playwright. Keisha's camera tried to swallow all of us. My aunt whispered, "Please." But she didn't say who to. Maybe to God. Maybe to me. Maybe to the boys she still saw under all those hoodies. Maybe to paperwork. The deputy walked me through the inventory process in a voice that smelled like coffee in winter. We stood by the driver's door while he noted the state of the vehicle. The tow operator snapped photos. Derek paced like a caged influencer. "You're ruining my business," he told me. "Do you even get that?" He thrust a finger toward the city. "My clients call me because I deliver. You just—" His hand cut a line in the air, blocked me. He looked genuinely injured, like I'd canceled Christmas for a neighborhood. That's when it hit me. He truly believed that using my name as a credit card was not a sin but a strategy. "Sir, step back," the deputy said again. And Derek did, only because his reflexes were trained by men with badges long before tonight. He'd danced around citations since he was old enough to speed. He knew when the music changed. When the deputy opened the driver's door, a cold leather smell puffed out. A worn Cubs cap sat in the back seat. A fast food bag crumpled on the floor. In the glove box, a title packet, 3 parking tickets, a folded photo of Derek and Keisha from a Navy Pier Ferris wheel car, his smile so bright it made everything else irrelevant. The deputy made a note and handed me a small zip bag. "Your copy of the keys and the receipt," he said. The metal teeth felt heavy in my palm. "You think you won," Derek said, "but the bank's still going to call you. You think they care about your little detective? This is Chicago, baby. People lose papers. People forget signatures. The car will be back with me by morning." "I don't think anything," I said. "I read." Keisha laughed. "She's corny." "You're broke," Derek shot, with the precision of someone who knows the shallowest wound that bleeds the most in my family. Money, shame. He pointed to my aunt again. "Titi, tell her to stop. And tell her to stop embarrassing us." My aunt did something none of us expected. She took a step toward me and took my face in both her hands. "I'm proud of you," she said, and it shook the air. "I should have said it earlier. I'm proud." Then she turned to Derek. "You will bring me my spare key to my basement," she said, "and you will not come back until you talk to a lawyer. I will not bless this foolishness." He blinked. The line to Keisha's phone went silent. The tow operator hooked the challenger and the chain rattled into a chorus. The deputy signed off, and paperwork closed like a sealed door. As the tow truck pulled forward, Derek took a step like he might reach for the handle, then stopped. He watched the car roll onto the street. He muttered, so quiet only the concrete could hear, to no one and everyone, "I'll fix it." He posted nothing that night. The next morning, I walked into the Richard J. Daley Center with a folder stacked like a skyscraper and met Detective Carr outside the clerk's office. "We got a bite," she said, eyes bright the way cops get when they smell the moment momentum changes. "Ray from the dealership sent an internal email last week complaining that the cousin is getting cold feet." We subpoenaed call logs. "Guess who he called after you visited? Our boy Derek. Guess how long? 9 minutes, 32 seconds. She grinned a tired grin. "It's hard to teach people not to narrate their crimes." I learned how the city eats paperwork and spits out orders. I learned the language of prosecutors who can sound bored while they're handed your whole life. Assistant State's Attorney Patel took my statement in a conference room with a view of downtown that made me feel small and furious. "We're likely looking at identity theft and forgery charges," she said. "Restitution is straightforward, though collection isn't." I told her about the AirTag. She did not approve and did not scold. "Remove it," she said. "Let us work." I removed it that afternoon, my fingers numb from the cold, my courage bigger than my fear for the first time in a month. That night, Derek called. "This is your last chance to act like family," he said. He didn't sound like a man who'd lost a car. He sounded like the mayor of his own city defending a budget. "Say you're sorry. Say you were confused. We can use your good credit for a few weeks to clean something up, and then we're clean, both of us." "My credit's dead because of you," I said. He sighed. "Because you made it public. It would have resolved. You don't understand how it works." "Explain it to me," I said. He was quiet long enough for me to imagine he realized he had nothing, but he did. "Everybody wins," he said finally. "The banks get their interest. You get a cut. I get to keep my clients. We keep money in the family. Why you want to be a cop?" "I want to be someone who can sleep," I said. "You think cops sleep?" He laughed. "They nap with one eye open, just like you." When we hung up, the text came. A photo of my mother's building with a red circle drawn around the mailbox. No words, just the circle. I called Detective Carr. "It's intimidation," she said. "Keep the text. We log it. You still want to proceed?" Her question was gentle, like a hand on a doorknob. I didn't sleep. I watched the winter light creep around my curtains like a worried friend. I thought about my aunt's hands on my cheeks. I thought about the way Derek said "fix" like it was a prayer. I thought about a younger version of him dancing at quinceañeras and making me laugh when I had braces. I thought about the Challenger's engine like a heartbeat you could hear from half a block. And I thought about my name, how my mother taught me to sign it with a flourish like a ribbon. "Yes," I told Detective Carr, "I want to proceed." In Cook County, the wheels turn slow and then all at once. An indictment will make a room breathe different when a clerk reads charges with words like intent and fraudulently, as if they're describing a weather system. Derek hired a lawyer who smelled like lacquer and liked the sound of his own wristwatch thumping the table. He entered a plea of not guilty. He posted a story from the hallway captioned "Hater Season." Keisha wore sunglasses indoors and rolled her lips over gloss. ASA Patel shook my hand outside courtroom 304 and said, "We're building." The thing about building is, you have to pick what material you're willing to carry. I carried printouts. I carried passwords. I carried a file of voicemails I had started saving like they mattered. And I carried my mother's look when I told her the whole truth. She didn't cry. She nodded, like she'd always suspected our family would come to this crossroads, and she'd been saving her tears for something else. Derek still believed he owned the street. I watched him swagger past the woman at the security desk like he might tip her for holding the metal detector steady. He stopped at the Starbucks in the basement and ordered loudly. He laughed with two men who smelled like the back room of a dealership. He never looked worried until the judge said the word restitution like a bell. His upper lip twitched. It was small, but it was there. The next hearing would turn everything electric. Court does not move like television. It moves like snow, quiet, relentless, heavy, and then suddenly the whole city is different. The morning of the evidentiary hearing, I sat on a hard bench outside 304 and watched lawyers hustle in wool coats, their briefcases dark as old gravestones. A couple argued in whispers about a wedding band. A teenager fell asleep against a pillar like he belonged to it. Detective Carr arrived in a charcoal suit with a stack of exhibits and an expression that cut through noise. A.S.A. Patel joined her, and the two of them bent over a table like surgeons. My mother took my hand. She wears a ring I bought her when my first big bonus hit. The fake diamond has a scratch you can only see if the light hits wrong. She squeezed, then released, then squeezed again. A rhythm older than paperwork. Inside, the judge, a woman with hair like she'd won a scholarship in the 80s and never let it go, called our case. Derek's lawyer rose with the confidence of a yacht. He argued clerical error. He argued miscommunication. He argued that the signatures resembled but did not match, that the lenders were complicit in sloppy verifications, that, if anything, this was a civil matter, gone wild. He said the phrase, family squabble, twice. He pronounced my name with a flourish that made me feel like he was complimenting himself for rolling the R piece. A.S.A. Patel's opening was less music, more metronome. She entered into the record, the notarized sales packet, the credit pull logs, the dealerships, internal email with Ray's 9-minute call to Derek timestamped to the second, and the audio of my phone call to Derek where he explained his vision of everybody wins. She played that part twice. In the second play, the courtroom listened hard enough to make the fluorescent lights hum louder. Derek frowned at his own voice like someone had dubbed him badly. Patel called Ray. He took the stand with a haircut that wanted you to believe nothing could surprise him. Under oath, nothing belonged to him, including his name. He slid responsibility away from himself like a card trick. We rely on the finance company's process, he said 3 times. When Patel asked why he called Derek immediately after my visit, he said, professional courtesy. When she pressed, he deflated 1/2 inch into the chair. Because he said it was a family thing, he admitted finally. He said she knew. He said she was doing him a favor. Patel called me. My knees turned to microwave plastic and then somehow carried me to the stand. I told the truth in small, bright steps. I described the first call from the lender with my breath behaving like a stranger. I held the credit reports and the fraud report and the police report. I did not cry, but my throat made a decision I could feel. When Patel asked if I recognized the signature on the contract, I said yes. I recognized how someone tried to practice me and got bored halfway through. When she asked if Derek had ever asked permission to use my tax ID, I said he asked me to be quiet and call it love. Derek's attorney tried to make me say I misunderstood, that I was punishing success I envied, that I was weaponizing the state because I was single and bitter in an age of couples buying condos. He held up my HR form with the credit score drop like it was porn. Isn't it true, he purred, that your employer took action against you based on a policy you signed, not based on any act by my client? I looked at him until he got uncomfortable. My employer followed rules. I said, your client broke them. The judge hid a smile. Then came the part that felt like a movie had been dunked in cold water and turned into my life. Patel called the bank's fraud manager. Numbers glowed on screens. An IP address from the Montrose apartment traced back to a device Derek had registered for a used car wholesale platform. A notary stamp, sloppy, off by a date, belonged to a man who'd notarized 5 of Derek's previous transfers. The manager read transaction times, the precise minute invoices were sent, the minute the dealership ran the credit, the minute Derek texted Ray a photo of a temporary plate with a laughing emoji. And then the kicker. An internal bank email advising repossession after my fraud claim, followed by a reply from the same bank telling collections to stand down because the state's attorney's office had flagged the file for evidence in a criminal matter and for direct restitution. Derek's lawyer objected that words like repossession favored the state. The judge overruled. "We deal in facts here," she said, "not vibes." When she said that, Derek's jaw clicked. Outside the courtroom during a recess, Derek intercepted me by the water fountain with a smile that had cracks. "Are you done?" he asked. "We can walk away from this right now. You can tell them you overreacted." He leaned in. "You're making yourself look like a snitch." "Snitches tell on friends," I said. "You're a thief." He straightened. For the first time, I could see the boy who used to steal coins from his mother's purse and swear it was for bus fare. He didn't apologize. He blinked like there was sweat in his eyes, and then smirked again, the reflex he used like chapstick. "I'm still going to eat," he said. "I'm still me." "You're still indicted," I said. Back inside, Patel presented a proposed restitution schedule that included my ruined credit repair costs, lost wages from 2 days of HR purgatory, and the fair market value of the challenger, minus the bank's lien, the difference to be resolved by transferring title to me as the direct victim under Illinois restitution statutes. Derek and his lawyer sputtered. "That's extreme," the lawyer said. "That's punitive." The judge tilted her head like a hawk. "It's restorative," she said. "If Ms. Alvarez had to carry a debt she did not incur, Mr. Santiago can carry the loss of a vehicle he obtained with her identity. The math scans." My heart smacked my ribs. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. A text from my aunt. No words, just a prayer hands emoji and a red heart. The judge set a sentencing date and allowed Derek out on conditions that turned his swagger into a schedule. No contact with me, no new credit lines. Surrender of passport. "I'm generous today," she said. "Don't invite me to be otherwise." In the corridor, Asa Patel tucked her hair behind her ear and said, "We're almost there. I can't promise outcomes, but the judge signaled." Detective Carr clapped me gently on the shoulder. "Breathe," she said. "Winners forget to breathe." For the rest of that week, I lived like a person who had found a loose thread in a sweater and pulled until something beautiful shrank a size but fit better. Then the bank tried to blow it all up. A bank is a cathedral that pretends to be a friend. 3 days before sentencing, the lender's counsel filed a motion to assert priority over the challenger and proposed a compromise that would leave me with a check so small it might have insulted a parking meter. Their lawyer wore a tie, the color of debt. He argued lien rights, like they were carved into Mount Rushmore. He didn't say I deserved what happened, but his eyebrows did. Asa Patel wasn't rattled. She filed a response that read like someone stitched the law to common sense. She cited case law I didn't know existed, where vehicles obtained through identity fraud had been carved out for victims. She argued that public policy favored direct restitution, especially where a lender's own verification failures contributed to the fraud. She did not say, "You got lazy," but the judge could hear it. Detective Carr supplied an affidavit summarizing the evidence that the bank's collectors had called my number, ignored my fraud alert, and noted consumer claims identity theft, but still scheduled a first payment call. I had written the date of that call in a margin during the worst week of my life. I brought that page. We stapled our pain with their paper. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse cafeteria served scrambled eggs that had given up. I sat and watched attorneys chew. When we filed into the courtroom, the bench looked higher than usual. The bank's lawyer stood with his tabs. Asa Patel stood with her foot just slightly forward, a dancer waiting for the downbeat. The judge listened, her expression polite enough to be dangerous. In the hallway between arguments, I checked my phone, and there he was, Derek, in a photo taken last summer by the lake, arms out, freedom as a posture. He vaulted to my screen, then the way memories do when you don't invite them. I almost put the phone away when a new message slid in, addressed to me in a group thread of 6 family members. "Pray for me," he wrote. "She's trying to destroy me." A flurry of replies, heart emojis, prayer hands. "God's got you. We all make mistakes, mijo." I typed and deleted and typed again, then put the phone face down on the bench. When the judge returned to the bench, she looked down like she was considering a map of our city and deciding where to put a river. "The bank's lien is acknowledged," she said, "but the equities in this case are not subtle." She paused, a beat she'd earned. "Where a lender's processes fail and a victim's identity is exploited, the court will not permit the lender simply to leapfrog the victim at the finish line." She granted the state's motion for direct restitution in kind, the vehicle's title to be transferred to me, subject to auction if I chose to liquidate, with proceeds first to me for the documented losses, then to the bank for any balance. "If you don't like it," she added to the bank's counsel, "scrub your verifications harder." It felt like the whole room exhaled through its shoes. Derek's lawyer choked on a polite objection. The judge overruled. "Mr. Santiago," she said, and something in her voice quieted him the way sirens quiet a party. "You are not clever. You are a garden-variety liar who used family as a crowbar. Your sentence will reflect that truth." She imposed probation with conditions that sounded less like mercy and more like an ankle bracelet made of paper, a financial literacy course, community service at a nonprofit that helps identity theft victims, a restitution schedule to me for all non-vehicle damages, and, like a bell tolling again, the formal transfer of the challenger. Outside, a gust of wind knifed through the Daily Center Plaza and sent pigeons scattering like gossip. My mother hugged me with a pressure that corrected my posture. Detective Carr shook my hand and said, "You did this." A.S.A. Patel allowed herself a private smile. "You don't get to keep the whole car unless you want the headache," she warned kindly. "You'll decide." I thought about headaches. I thought about joy. I didn't go straight to the impound lot that day. I went to North Star Cafe in the Loop and ate a salad too healthy for a victory lunch. Then I walked down to the river and watched a tourist boat glide under a bridge like a rumor. My phone vibrated with messages, some jubilant, some backhanded, but I put it away and listened to the city churn like a huge, patient machine. On State Street, a busker played "Ain't No Sunshine" on a saxophone that made commuters cry into their scarves. That evening, with the sky that Chicago gray that feels like a conspiracy, I went to the city yard with the deputy again, my folder again, my aunt this time. Keisha didn't come. Derek didn't either. My aunt pressed a Tupperware into my hands before we got out of the car. Yellow rice, roasted chicken, comfort that survives any ruling. "For later," she said. Her voice held a tremor of loss and relief. We signed the last forms. The gate rolled open. The challenger waited. I ran my hand along the driver's side as if the paint might feel like triumph. It felt like a car. Even revenge moves at the speed limit. I turned the key. The engine answered like an orchestra waking up. My aunt made the sign of the cross. I looked at the deputy, who nodded at the driveway with a small, everything-you-need gesture. I drove out under a string of halogen lights and eased onto the street. At the first red light, I looked in the mirror and saw myself in a car I had not asked for, that my name had paid for twice. Once in dollars, I did not spend. Once in dignity, I refused to lose. On Western Avenue, a kid on a bike looked at the car and nodded approval. It felt like confusing grace. 2 blocks later, cop lights flashed behind me. I pulled over, heart cannoning. The officer approached with a face that had been tired since the 90s. "Nice ride," he said, as he took my license. "Just a heads up. Plate reads, under a hold." I handed him the order, hand steady now, like the world had decided to stay in one place for a minute. He read, nodded, and handed it back. "Have a good night," he said. "Drive safe." As he returned to his cruiser, he glanced at the car again and added, "Get rid of the decal." I looked at the rear window. "Hustle better," sneered back at me. "First thing tomorrow," I said to no one. At home, I parked on the street and stared at the hood, catching streetlight like a stage. My mother came down in slippers. "It's loud," she said, half scolding, half proud. We stood together in the cold, listening to the engine ticking down like a gentle warning. And then my phone lit with a new number I knew, Derek's. "Enjoy your cop car," he said. "You're a cop now." His voice had shrunk. It made him sound less like a mayor, more like a man looking for an exit. "I'm just someone who read," I said, and hung up. The next morning, under a sky the color of a pencil eraser, I drove the Challenger to a body shop in Pilsen and had the decal scraped off. The guy with the heat gun asked if I wanted to replace it with something. "No," I said. "I think it looks good, honest." He squinted. "That's a new look around here." I listed the car for sale a week later. The bank sent glossy papers about auction protocols like they'd just invented procedure. We did it straight. Title transfer, proceeds calculated, my costs first, then their share, because the law had put my sanity ahead of their boredom for once. When a kid from Little Village showed up with his uncle and cash that smelled like a kitchen, he ran his hand along the hood like I had. Reverent. "You sure you don't want to keep it?" he asked. I thought about how loud it was. I thought about sleeping. I thought about buses and the calm of reading a paperback while the city shook you from one place to another. "I'm sure," I said. When the tow truck took the Challenger to its new home, the street felt different, lighter. Less like a stage for men whose shoes were always too clean for winter. I went inside and opened a spreadsheet. I logged the auction number, the dollar amount, the bank's cut, the remaining restitution payments Derek would owe me in installments the court would enforce like gravity. Then I closed the laptop and made arroz con leche because sweetness is a policy too. In the months that followed, I learned the long tale of fraud. I disputed a charge from a furniture store I've never stepped into on Elston. I reassured my HR manager that the next quarterly check would show progress. I helped my mother replace her mailbox with one you can't pry open with a butter knife. Derek completed his community service and posted a selfie outside a nonprofit holding a clipboard like it wasn't heavy. Some days I felt generous. Most days I didn't feel anything at all. My aunt invited him to Sunday dinners again, and I didn't go for a while. When I finally did, we passed each other in the kitchen like we were in a play where the stage directions told us not to speak. He said, "Hey." I said, "Hey." Neither of us apologized out loud. Keisha sent me a DM one night. "You didn't deserve that," she wrote. "We're not together anymore." I typed, "I hope you're okay," and meant it, then muted her stories. On a day in late spring, when the tulips in the loop tried their damnedest to cheer up Wabash, I walked past the Daily Center and looked up at the sculpture that refuses to be a horse. A woman was having her wedding photos taken on the steps. The wind lifted her veil like a concept. I felt a flash of something I didn't recognize until it settled into a word I rarely trust. Peace. I still keep the restitution receipts in a folder. I still get a small check every month that makes the state's seal look almost affectionate. I still jump when an unknown number calls, but I also sleep. The first night I slept through until my alarm, I woke up with tears on my neck like someone had turned gravity up while I was dreaming and drained the fear out of me. On a hot August night, I took the 52 bus down California and got off early to walk. The sky was humid and democratic, putting everyone under the same damp blanket. In a storefront window, a TV glowed with the news. The bank that tried to leapfrog me had settled a class action for sloppy verifications. The anchor smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I laughed into my mask. I turned into a bodega for a bottle of Topo Chico, and the kid behind the counter, maybe 19, maybe already 50, looked up and said, "You used to drive that gray muscle car, right?" I blinked. "For a week," I said. He nodded like he'd known me all along. "It looked too loud for you," he said, and it felt like a compliment. Outside, a motorcycle ripped past like a migraine, and I didn't flinch. At the next family barbecue, my aunt kissed me twice and piled my plate too high. Derek arrived late and didn't look at me. When he finally did, his face was a map of bridges he'd had to cross without applause. He walked over. "You okay?" he asked, small. "I'm okay," I said, true. He swallowed. "I'm paying," he said, like the words hurt. "On time." "I know," I said. "I see the checks." He nodded. "I got a job," he added, almost proud. "At a warehouse. It's boring." "Boring is a blessing," I said, and he cracked a half smile before he remembered he wasn't supposed to. We stood there 2 beats too long, then stepped apart like magnets, spun the right way finally. My mother called me to come get more plantains. The little kids ran in circles. The sun landed on the aluminum trays like a special effect. I sat on a folding chair and felt, for once, the exact weight of my own life resting steady in my hands. That night, I opened my drawer and looked at the title transfer form, stamped and done, at the paper that once meant war, and now meant ordinary. I tucked it behind my passport. I turned off the light. People ask sometimes, quietly, in the kind of voice that hopes to borrow courage without being seen, how it felt. Were you scared? Did you ever want to just drop it? The truth is, I was scared most of the time. I wanted to drop it every day. But every time I reached for the floor, I'd remember the way the Challenger's engine sounded like theft pretending to be music, and my aunt's hands on my face, and the judge saying, "We deal in facts here, not vibes," and I would find a new way to stand up again. In the end, revenge wasn't the car. Revenge was walking down Milwaukee Avenue on a Saturday morning with coffee, hearing an engine snarl behind me, and not having my heart break into a sprint. Sometimes I still lock my glove box even when it's empty, and sometimes I still double-check my mailbox twice, but when I sign my name now, the flourish at the end is a little sharper, a little brighter, a little more like a blade that points back at anyone who ever thought they could use it without me. The end.